So Chris, Ron Howard has said that James is like a rock star on wheels. Is that how you approach the character?
I mean, yeah, he embodied the glamour and glory of Formula One and in the 70s era and the freedom and, you know, enjoyment I think that those guys were having. And he was certainly a rock star, you know. It was also a very complicated, contradicting personality there, you know. There was this huge presence and confidence and ego, but there was a vulnerability and a conflict in there. He had a need to you know, be acknowledged for his talent and not so much the sort of exploits he'd do off the track. But it was a fun thing to get involved in, you know, especially set in the 70s when it was, you know, Formula One was at its apex of glory and glamour.
Well, you did a lot of research for the part, and of course there are a lot of archival interviews with James Hunt, and he was a BBC presenter, so he has a very well-known persona. But how did you go about like finding kind of his off-camera persona, learning about what people didn't see?
You know, we had these, the whole lot of BBC interviews footage, and there was like B-roll from those interviews of kind of before and after of James, when he would be sitting there kind of riffing and looking down the camera and making faces, and he was like a big kid, you know. He had an ownership of his environment, like much like kids do, you know. If he was interested in something, he'd be into it. If not, whatever, he's on to something else. And that really was, I found, the sort of strongest thing I was trying to hook into was the kind of freedom he lived with, and there's an honesty to it, and an kind of corrupted way of doing things. You know, I didn't want to conform to any standard or social etiquette. It was like, this is how I'm going to do it.
And of course, you learned about his legendary status as a ladies' man.
Right,
What were some of the stories about that you?
I mean, I think that the number is of statistic of 5,000 women he'd slept with, and they were staying in a hotel one time where there was the 30 air hostesses from an airline were there, and he'd slept with all of them in a couple of days. And you know, it kind of transcended any story I've heard before. You know, I spoke to one of the guys who had raced with him and said, you know, that one night they were out partying all night and all into the morning, and then went straight to the track. He threw up before the race, got in the car, had a smoke, and off he went. And he said that was James. It's how he did things, you know. And he was unlike anyone else.
Growing up in Australia, were you a Formula One fan at all, or?
No, not really. I didn't know much about Formula One. My dad used to race motorbikes, and so that kind of you know, that world and sort of lifestyle, I kind of had a little bit of a education on, but never Formula One, and kind of respected it and had an appreciation for it a lot more since being involved in the movie.